Today we're talking about another book dealing with some dark themes: guilt, grief, loss, regret. But on top of all that, we're dealing with a story of revenge, a vengeance story. If that sounds like something you're interested in, come back after the intro. What's up, everybody? My name is Brad, and today we're back with another book review for you guys. If you happen to be new to the channel, I read a lot of indie and small press horror, a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy. If that's something that you are interested in, please consider hitting the subscribe button down below. Check out some of the other videos on the channel, and maybe you'll find something that you enjoy. But today, the book we're talking about is Come Join the Murder by Rae Garcia. Now, this is from Close to the Bone Publishing. This was sent to me by Holly for review consideration, and she did sign a little note in here. Thanks for reading. She signed it. But this one, I want to read a really small quote from a song real quick. The quote is, "Come join the murder, come join the black." And that's by the White Buffalo and the Forest Rangers. The reason I mention that is because the first time I ever heard anything about this book, the title itself reminded me of the song "Come Join the Murder" from the show Sons of Anarchy. And I happened to mention that in one of my videos, maybe my mail time video or a TBR video or something. And Holly actually responded saying she did draw inspiration from that song in the show. And actually the characters' last names in here, the family we're following, Rebecca, her last name is Crow, which was also inspired by the show Sons of Anarchy. So I thought that was pretty cool. A little Easter egg, if you will, from the show Sons of Anarchy. But all that aside, let's get into the actual review. For this one, it is Holly's debut novel. And anytime going into a debut novel, I don't really know what to expect. But I was already intrigued by the title, with it being from sort of Sons of Anarchy. And I really actually dig the cover art, if it'll focus on there. It's simple, but it's eye-catching. It's sort of have the drops of water, and it's got like the crow or the raven up here. And actually, I think Holly did the cover art. Yeah, it says cover by Rae Garcia. So she's multi-talented. She's a graphic artist and author. So all that said, I'm not sure what to expect going in. This turned out to be a much darker read than I was anticipating. So the sort of plot here revolves around the loss of a child. And that's not a spoiler. It's on the back of the book. And that's, the whole reason for this story is dealing with the loss of a child. And anytime that is something, a main sort of point in a book, you're always in for a pretty heavy read. And this one was no different here. We're following Rebecca Crow, and she has just lost her 4-year-old son. That event takes place in the book. It's not prior to the book. She just lost her 4-year-old son named Ollie in this sort of mysterious, accident. We're not really sure, but Rebecca's husband's car is pulled out of the canal, and her son Ollie is found dead inside. And then on top of that, her husband is missing. We're not sure if he is alive or dead. So Rebecca's world is instantly just completely shattered with this devastating news, and she has no one to grieve with, no one to lean on. She has no emotional support system because on top of the devastating loss of her child, her husband is missing. She doesn't have that emotional support, and that is also gnawing on top of her already fractured psyche from just the emotional stress and trauma of losing her son, just out of completely nowhere. So with all that going on, the loss of her son and the unknown circumstances surrounding her husband, we don't know his fate, if he's alive or dead. Rebecca's guilt really starts to pour in like the rising tide and starts to erode away and chip away at her sanity. Rebecca, she starts to question herself. Was she a good enough wife and mother? Did she pay enough attention to her son, Ollie? Did she give enough attention and focus to him? Or was she more worried about her job and having her own sort of quiet time, her own peace of mind? And these questions start to creep in and start to gnaw at her. All those moments that she reflects back on with her son, where she would say, not right now, maybe later, hold on a minute. all that starts to really wear on her and starts to break her down. And it's just a traumatic experience that sort of relives these horrible emotions over and over again. She sort of starts seeing her son like in the rearview mirror of the car. Sort of her psyche is starting to fracture, and it's all, you know, that guilt and that regret in believing that maybe she wasn't the best mom. Maybe, you know, instead of saying, you know, I need to work on this right now, and having Ollie go do something else, you know, she should have put her work away, spent more time with her son. You know, life is short, life is fleeting, and all that really crashes down upon Rebecca like a hammer blow. Just, you know, she's never going to get those moments back. Those moments are gone forever. There's no do-overs for those moments that she missed out on with her son because she was focused on other things. And, you know, upon, you know, the death of her son, I think that's the most crushing thing to her, is that she's not going to get any of those moments back. She's not going to get any do-overs to, you know, spend any more time with her son, Ollie. So this one, it really hit home for me with the subject matter, because myself, I have a son who's also 4 years old, the same exact age as Ollie was in the book. And I'll admit, you know, I did get emotional with some of the stuff, especially near the beginning of the book when this loss first happens, and Rebecca dealing with his funeral and those sort of quiet moments where she'd go into his room and, you know, she would picture him, what he used to do, playing and running through the house, and it's just quiet and empty and hollow now. It did get to me a bit, I'll admit. So anytime an author is able to elicit that emotional response through the power of their words, to me, they're doing something right in their book. And that doesn't happen very often with me, where I do get that sort of emotional response, whether it is, you know, sadness or just really angry or full of joy, whatever it is. Anytime a writer can do that to the reader, they're definitely doing something right. They definitely have the writing chops and capabilities in my book. And I think that's the sign of a really fantastic author, when they are able to draw those emotions, whatever emotion it is, out of the reader. So this story, it cuts back and forth between Rebecca's viewpoint. We get to be in her perspective, and it cuts over to a man named James, and we get to follow his life and see life through his eyes. James, he's this low-life dude. He's not a good dude. There's this blackness, this darkness festering within him. It seems like life has had its boot heel just pressed down on his neck his entire life, just holding him down. He's a victim himself of abuse, and he's harboring these past traumas that have caused him to sort of go down this misguided path in life. He's sort of out of a job, and he's trying to support himself and his mother, and he's turned to robbery to do this. And one fateful day, you know, he comes across the path of Ollie and Ollie's father. Their lives intertwine, and the actions of that day, you know, have ramifications and change the course, alter the course for everyone's lives involved. This isn't a spoiler. You know, it says it on the back of the book, and we know this pretty early from the beginning once we get into James' perspective. But James is a killer, and in one way or other, he's responsible for the death of Ollie and ripping Rebecca's child away from her. And like I said, that just alters the course of James's life and Rebecca's life, sort of eventually putting them on a crash course for each other. So even though Rebecca and James are on opposite sides of the societal spectrum, you know, Rebecca has a nice paying job. She's sort of upper middle class. She has a family. James is on the opposite end of that. He's low income. You know, he's basically no income. He doesn't have a job. He lives in sort of the ghetto, the slums, and that's just a life he's never been able to claw himself away from. All that aside, Rebecca and James, they have more in common than actually meets the eye. The book here, Come Join the Murder, really is about the study and the transformation of becoming a murderer. You know, sort of asks the questions, are we all born with this sort of dark stain just waiting to manifest within inside of us? Or is it something that is bred out of circumstance, trauma, you know, or revenge? You know, does everyone have the capacity for violence and to kill and take another life? And if not, what is it that separates us from the rest of them? Rebecca, she's not pleased with the way the police investigation's going. They don't have any new suspects. They haven't really made any headway. her husband is still missing. They don't have any new information on him. So she's sort of fed up, and she can't just sit by and do nothing. So she decides to take matters into her own hands and seek her own justice upon whoever it is that just came in and completely shattered her life. She's hell-bent on revenge, and her judgment starts to become clouded when she starts to stare into this abyss. But the question is, what is staring back at her? Is she going to take the high road to forgiveness, or is she going to become the monster itself that she has vowed to sort of hunt down and gain revenge upon? I will say that this book, it does have a bit of repetitiveness to it. I read a few other reviews where that did sort of bother the readers a bit, and the repetitiveness comes in where Rebecca in her mind is sort of fantasizing or imagining the final moments of Ollie and what happened with her husband. It all starts out the same. It's literally word for word the same every time, but those sort of waking nightmares, they change drastically. There's different suspects, different circumstances as to what happens. And it seems like the further and further we get into the book, the more vile and violent those sort of fantasies, nightmares, whatever you want to call them, start to become. And it's really, I liked it because it really sort of dove into Rebecca's psyche, and you can tell she's declining. She's sort of going mad, sort of into this psychosis a bit. And it seems like she's sort of on the decline, on the way to maybe becoming a monster herself. So I did like those parts. They were a bit repetitive at the beginnings of each of those little sections. They all start out on with like the header the same date. I think it's like July 13th. I'm not going to be able to find one now. So when it's going to happen. Friday, June 8th is the header, and then it'll have sort of the last parts of the phone conversation she had with her husband, and then the fantasizing about who the suspect might be this time, who the killer is this time, and what all they actually did to her husband and her son. But like I said, I liked it because it shows that she's sort of losing it, and her state of mind is just slowly crumbling away and decaying. So I did enjoy those parts, even though they were a bit repetitive. Like I'm being a bit repetitive. But to close this out, heavy with guilt, grief, and regret, Come Join the Murder by Rae Garcia is a darkly brutal story of vengeance and how the capacity to kill lurks within us all. The only question is, what would it take to come join the murder? See what I did there? That was pretty crafty. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. This has been my 4-star review of Come Join the Murder by Rae Garcia. I thoroughly enjoyed this read. It was, like I said, I didn't know what to expect going in, but I was pleasantly surprised. Holly is a really great writer, and I look forward to reading more of her work. Actually, she has a new book, I think it just came out, that she co-wrote with her husband, which is pretty cool. And I can't remember exactly what it's called. It's like The Massacre of Easton Falls. It's like a Bigfoot revenge story or something like that. I'll pop a picture up of it here real quick so you can see it. I know there's some people on the channel that are fans that watch. I've enjoyed sort of Bigfoot and cryptid stories and stuff. So maybe check that one out. This one is labeled as a psychological thriller, but it definitely skirts the line and bleeds into the horror community. I think if you're a horror fan, you'll like this. Really dealing with the real life horrors, the guilt and grief and regret, and just the sort of having the blinders on and being hell-bent on revenge. There's lots of violence in here, some brutal stuff. And I thoroughly enjoyed the read. I was pleasantly surprised with the story I got here. But anyway, I've rambled on too long. This has been my 4-star review of Come Join the Murder by Rae Garcia. Thank you all for spending your time with me. Again, my name is Brad, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.